Hi, I'm Milo Dennison.
I'm Kev Bamboo, and this is Rip It Up Reviews.
Rip It Up Reviews covers cult movies, specially curated by your regular hosts of Rip It Up Again.
Yeah, and on tonight's review, it's Andy Milligan's cult classic, The Weirdo, starring Steve Burington, Jessica Straus, and Naomi Sherwood. But before we get into the review, Milo, because there's plenty to talk about,
Yeah.
Andy Milligan was somewhat of an estranged director and guy, as we know from people that we've spoken to. But do you know any other Andy Milligan types?
In regards to like filmmakers, Andy Milligan types.
Yeah, maybe, working on set and you've met some people that are probably just a little bit, maybe different.
Yeah, I when I was in Dublin, I worked with this guy, and I think he's still working on the film. It's going to be one of those long, slow processes kind of things. But I hope he gets it done, because my theory on him is that he's either a genius or just kind of a bit mental. And,
Yeah.
and I want it to lean towards the genius side, but he's got this, he did a play that he wrote and directed, and basically it took place in the mind of some alien being thing, and he had all these cool masks going, and it was so bizarre and so weird, and he decided to take that play and turn it into a film. So I helped him film just kind of a couple test takes for the film and stuff, so that way he could kind of work on getting funding and stuff for it, because there's a lot of effects that go along with it. And I saw the play multiple times because I helped him with it, but it made no sense to me. And the whole thing is just so weird, but it's also brilliantly genius. And so
Yeah.
I hope he finishes it. And I can't wait. So he's either a David Lynch or an Andy Milligan, and I hope
So you're hoping it's on the Lynch side, not on
it's
the
on the Lynch
Milligan
side
side.
over the
Cool.
Milligan side. Yeah.
So on to The Weirdo then. Initial take.
Yeah. So I've seen two Andy Milligan films now. I've also watched the
Monstrosity?
Monstrosity. Thank you. So I've also watched the
Yeah.
Monstrosity, and that one was quite terrible. And so I would say the editing is certainly much better on this one. So he mustn't
Yeah.
have had a different editor, or maybe he learned how to edit a little bit in the 2 years between the two films. So the editing was certainly much better on this one. And the story was a little bit better, I guess. I don't know. It's still an Andy Milligan film. Yeah. So you take kind of this kid that's the weirdo. He's kind of ostracized by society. He's abused. And he kind of meets a girl who's also a bit of a weirdo in her way. And they find love in a kind of a sweet way. But they're fighting against all the townspeople to be together, which I think it's kind of a sweet story of
Yeah, because they're well matched. They're obviously, they find each other and they're right for each other, kind of thing. And I think the character of Jenny is incredibly sweet and not innocent in the sense, because she knows that people are bad to the lead, to Donnie. Obviously Donnie doesn't quite fully understand that everyone kind of hates him, if you know what I mean. He might say, "Oh, no one ever talks to me." He knows that he's a loner, but he doesn't really understand the whole situation as to why he's, basically holed up in a shed.
Yeah.
Which is the odd one.
Which
My
which
take.
sorry,
Yeah,
which
sorry.
works though, because I
Yeah,
mean, if he's a little bit mentally off, he potentially wouldn't quite fully understand, right?
yeah, and we're talking. I mean, it's not that long ago that the movie was 89 or something like that. But I
Yeah.
suppose in the 80s, mental health, and issues related to that, where the approaches were incredibly different. I mean, people were they'd named them, mental asylums or lunatic asylums. We wouldn't even term that as a place now if people had to go and get therapy or treatment. People have therapy at home.
Yeah.
So it's the fact that you've got the equivalent of RTM from The Wizard of Oz, Miss Martins, is locking Donnie, away in a
In the shed.
shed, and just like, ring the bell, just do as you're told. It's like it's a very kind of simple structure for Donnie, which he probably needs, but then he realizes that there's other freedoms out there.
Yeah.
So from that aspect, there's kind of a good plot and a good scope for the story to like work upon there. My only initial take is that the script was just so weak that then everything just fell apart, you know, and it just seemed to lose its way, and they were chucking bits in for the sake of having a beginning, middle, and end. But yeah, the film is a little bit weird, and I suppose it's apt because the name of the film is The Weirdo. But we'd accept nothing else from an Andy Milligan film, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of in my notes too, especially how you mentioned the script is it kind of goes along, and you think like there's just points where like I don't really know what needs to happen here. So if you could maybe just kind of improvise a little bit, we'll film it and we'll see if that works, or we won't. I don't know, but we need to make the
it
film a
feels
bit
like
longer.
there was a loose script, and then it was just like, oh yeah, literally just go with, you know, he had the plot, he had the idea, and then it was just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, let's all just turn up on the day and then just see what happens, rather than
Totally. Yeah, pretty much.
camera, which we'll come on to a little bit later on, because I think that was a little bit more impressive compared to some of the other stuff. So I think you need to ask me on favorite scene.
Favorite scene? Let's do it, Kev. What is your favorite scene?
Favorite scene, I would say, I think I love the first kill of Donnie's mum. Basically, that's the first time Donnie kills. I think there's a couple of close times where you can see he's getting angry,
Yeah.
but it's his first kill as we know it within the movie. He may have killed before, we don't know, because there's a lot of protection around Donnie, you know, from Miss Martin, sorry, and others. They're all saying, "Oh, you should be careful of Donnie," you know. And then, you know, often there's in the script, oh, why is he dangerous? And then they're like, no, he's just different. But we never really know whether he's done anything before. So in the movie itself, yeah, the first kill's probably my favourite scene, just because of how bad the cut is from, you know, that they're having a fight because Donnie's going to be sent as a slave by his own mother. She's selling him to some dude. And then, yeah, she's got the hatchet, which is, there's a foreshadowing of the hatchet beforehand when that scene opens, because she's cutting some, you know, some big cake or something, like some angel cake or something. And then the next minute, yeah, they fall out. Donnie gets even more angry, and I like all that. I like the dynamic of that. I like the lighting in there. I think that looks great. The actual interior scene there is pretty cool. And then, but it's just the hilarity of, you've got this headshot moment. So he obviously wallops her with the hatchet, goes up, and then the next minute he's holding this incredibly fake head.
Totally.
that hasn't been. It looks like it hasn't been cast. You know, so it's not even been like a port. You know, there may have been a basic mold, but I like the scene, and then I like the B movie element of it being just this really poor prop.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's the one that stood out to me as a good scene. How about yourself?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's a good one. For me, I think there's the scene between Donnie and Jenny where they make love for the first time. It's a long scene, so it certainly could be edited down, but I think it's done in a really sweet way, where they're just talking and then they kiss and then they kind of do this slow undressing thing, and then they just kind of like embrace each other, and then it cuts to the next scene. I certainly maybe might have shown a little bit of them maybe like falling onto the bed or something like that before cutting. But I think it's just done, especially for an Andy Milligan film, it's done really lovely, and the music actually goes really well, which is also a nice change for an Andy Milligan film.
The thing that struck me as odd within the film in terms of consistency there is that you've got that really, really sweet scene, which is like the afternoon movie on TV. So it's incredibly PG. But then you've obviously got elements later on where, you know, there is nudity. Miss Mertens is using, like, calls Jenny a slut about, you know, 6 times. in
Yeah.
one scene when she finds them actually kissing near the end. So I find it odd that then there was nothing really, it didn't need to be a gratuitous scene, but as you say, even just falling onto the bed and a little bit more. But that may have been, the actors, may have just said, no, we're not doing, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah, who knows how that conversation went.
So that could be, that's out of our remit. But as a story in inconsistencies of levels of rating, if we're going to go that, it seemed odd. But yeah, it is a really sweet scene, and I think most of the scenes actually with Jenny tend to be quite sweet and understanding of Donnie and the both of them.
Absolutely. In my notes, I had the other scene that I think is really nice between the two of them is where she talks after they kiss for the first time, and she talks about being attacked when she was younger, and then he talks about his mother a little bit. Another very kind of sweet scene between the two of them.
Yeah, they've got that mutual understanding, which gives them a good match for two people that are kind of ostracized from society a little bit. So going on from that, least favorite scene.
Oh, that's a hard call. which one's the least favorite? Huh? Well, let's see here. So the first, there's a couple of quick scenes that come to mind. Like I think it's his last kill, isn't it? Isn't it Miss Martin the last kill? The fight with the fire.
It is kind of the last one. He does he slits the bully's throat in a final sequence and chops off the arms, but it's never fully established if he kills them because they just say, "Oh, he's lost too much blood."
Okay.
But for visual, it's Miss Martin. Sorry, and he kills.
Okay. Yeah. So Miss Martin. So they have a scene where they're fighting, and then something spills on the stove and lights on fire. So first of all, she's like a 90-year-old lady. And Donnie's barely holding his own against her, even though like he also managed to fight off the guy that his mother had hired, was selling him into slavery to, as just about
210-pound dudes, and then you've got like 80 pounds of nothing.
80-pound 90-year-old lady. And then just the way they did the fire with this like little patch on the arm, little patch, and then like the bit where she died, it's like they go down onto the floor, it turns to the side, and then it turns back. There's no screams or anything. Like you think she'd be screaming from burning to death. And then just there's this round circle on her face where she had been burnt, apparently, had died, but no fire anywhere else. It's just so poorly, cheesily done and unbelievable, which is saying a lot for this film.
Yeah.
And I had to put it on my least favorite list.
I struggled myself. I mean, yeah, we know there's several scenes where you think, Christ, what on earth is going on? Like, what's even if you take the basics and you're saying, right, how can we make this as good as we possibly can? Unless the intention, obviously, is to make it as bad as you possibly can. And
I so wish Andy Milligan were still alive so we could find out the answers to these questions.
Say, what, I did all this. I wanted to make the worst possible movies I could. It'd be awesome. I agree with you on that scene. It is just that it's that sudden, they're fighting for whatever reason. It's like there's a whole tub of alcohol, like rubbing alcohol or whatever on the side,
right next to the stove,
just right next to the stove. But the stove, as it looks, isn't lit. Mm-mm. But then the rubbing alcohol falls on, and suddenly, it's that wouldn't happen. There's so much continuity error going on, and it's like, when they then fight, and they've got these little, patches, as you say, that they've got that they're on fire. But the next minute, it's how she goes from being her, but then they either use a doll or something initially, and then she's got this totally smoked out face, but. It's not like he's put her face onto the stove.
No, that's the other thing.
Like if she went forward, and there was just like a visual of she went onto the stove face first or something, or even back, and then her hair caught on fire or something, that was all smoldered. But it's just you've got this, effectively, they've kind of like black-faced.
Basically, that would be the way to say it.
They've put polish on her face and then just like, let's just put a bit of blood and that'll do, you know. And the next minute, that's it, you know, that scene's done, and he's scarpering, and the fire crew are on the way. But my least favorite, I mean, that's there as much as many of them are, you know. There's some odd, like right at the end with the there's like a ranger or whatever comes through the park. He just randomly comes on. It's not like there's no real plot there. It's like there's not a car driving up into the woods and then getting out the car and then going down to the scene to kind of basically see Donnie's body there. He's just there, and I think it's Jenny that's like stood there with him, and she like just points, and then he's like, and then he grabs his jacket. Oh, there's blood, and then but Donnie's body isn't there, and he's gone, and he's like, well, where's the body, man? You know, that's like the twist, but it's just so it's so bad because he's like, multiple people have seen him since he got lynched on, like dead. Like one of the bullies, I think, goes up to him and then spits on him or something whilst his body's there. Yeah. Obviously, Jenny goes up to him and she cries, and then obviously she kind of wanders off as this ranger turns up next minute. Oh, Donnie's body's gone. So I thought that was pretty awful. And then at the beginning as well, it's when Donnie gets pushed around by the bullies. I think is it Nails and Vic, and there's another dude as well. But it's so poorly acted, and it's there's no resistance from Donnie at all. But then, you know, as the film goes, you know, like as the film goes on, he always seems to have some resistance in each scene when he, like, either whether vocally, physically, whatever. He always puts up some kind of small fight. But with those guys, he didn't really. Like when he runs away, he just kind of like, they've still got him, and then in their script it's like, oh, get him, guys, you know. And it's like, but you've still got him, you know. It's not like he's ran off, you know, 10 paces ahead. It's just, it's incredibly silly. But it is the Weirdo.
So good one. All right. Well, so we move into, you mentioned acting, but let's start with best actor.
Best actor, yeah. I mean, obviously it's a pretty small cast, and there's not really rich pickings there, is there, amongst best actors? I think obviously it's a relatively poor lead, although he does play a good, you know, a good recluse / retard or whatever, you know. I think he picks up that, but it's just so, again, it's just so wooden and poorly acted that you're not fully convinced. You just think that it's the dude is playing a recluse rather than that it is a recluse. I think Jenny's good. I think Jenny plays good as a cripple, although there's some questionable lines where it's like, I've got to go, because the first time we see her, she turns up at this, you know, it's Donnie's favourite gully little place to hang out and collects pieces of trash and shiny things. And obviously Jenny likes shiny things too. But she just suddenly appears, which apparently she's with her family, but we don't really see even like a little cut to of that family arriving. She just suddenly comes on, you know, camera right, she's there, oh hi, you know, and they're suddenly having this conversation. The next minute it's just like, oh, exit, camera left, and it's like, I've got to go, and then he's like, oh, my name's Donnie, you know. That's really poor, because it could have been so much, just again, simplicity could have made it so much better. I thought, but I did think on the whole, Jenny's character, you know, Jessica Straus did Jenny's character a bit more justice. Again, the bar's quite low, but of them all, and it was a smaller role, but I thought Reverend Cummins, played by John Rand, I think it was, and I think he was one of the few that actually, when he had whoever he was having his dialogue with, it flowed much better, and I think he brought better out of the other actors there in those scenes. Obviously, he played the typical kind of pedo reverend that was, you know, wanting to get Jenny on her own, and he's like, oh yeah, you just go and see Mrs. Cummins down the road, Donnie. I need to chat with Jenny a minute, you know. And it's like, yeah. But I did feel that his parts, like when Donnie's about to he's just killed Mrs. Cummins, and then the Reverend's kind of like obviously bringing the emergency services, and he's locked himself in this room with Donnie. I thought that was okay. And then, but obviously when we got into special effects, the continuity on there was a bit poor again, because he's like got these lights around him, and then suddenly these lights have burned his whole face off. But in terms of actor, yeah, I think John Rand probably for me as Reverend Cummins is just pinches it. But yeah, it's quite a low bar.
Yeah, it's a good answer. I think considering what he had to work with, he certainly tried to portray it as best as he could with as much seriousness as he could. Yeah, and I agree. I think Jessica Straus did a pretty damn good job as well for what she had. But I'm gonna go with Miss Martins, played by Naomi Sherwood.
Okay, yeah.
So a bit over the top disbelieving, but like I don't know why, but I just feel like she brought something to the character that made you dislike her, but also kind of understand her a little bit. And just that she's like this, little old lady working on this particular film. And again, taking it with like a certain level of like, I'm going to do the best job I can. With her, I decided to go with her as I think the best performance.
Cool. Yeah, I know she did play a good hag.
Yeah.
And I think even Donnie's mum was okay. But again, a lot of it was just all seemed a bit forced.
And that's probably
comes from naturally.
Yeah, sorry, that does probably come from them probably not having much of a script to work with, and so they're probably just trying to see what they can get in here that works and is believable.
Yeah, because if they had the improv option on it, which we assume, then the better actors would obviously bring out, a little bit more nuance to it and kind of develop the character a little bit more. But I think that's also the issue, is that several of the characters within it, because it's an hour and a half long, so it's not like it's 30 minutes or something. There wasn't much chance for the mains to kind of develop their characters too much, and flesh them out better. So I think that was the issue. And again, that's a script. It's a script issue. So yeah, I did think Naomi Sherwood did a good job as well as Miss Mines. I think it's just everything else around it that then makes them look a little bit bad.
Exactly.
So yeah, talking of bad, so worst actor. Who are you gonna spin the wheel?
Boy, who do we pick for this one? I'm gonna go with the bullies. All three of them. Okay. And I'm just going to group them together because they're just these stupid meathead types. The way they deliver their lines is not believable at all. Their behaviors, there's 100% nothing believable about these characters. I think what Andy did is he just went down to the local gym and said, hey, I need 3 meatheads here. You guys look like you work out quite a bit. I need some bullies. You want to come be my bullies? And they're like, yeah, I'll be bully.
Give them some beer, some burgers, and that's it.
Exactly.
Just crack up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's some bad performances in there. And I think that this would be harsh on who I'm going to say. I totally agree with you. The bullies are really poor because they do just seem like they've been plucked from nowhere with zero, not even an audition, just like, not even like. They're not even actors. Yeah, it's like you say, they just seem like they've been picked from anywhere. But another one for me, I nearly said the slave dude, because he just doesn't convince as this guy that's going to be taking Donnie away, and then he ends up
that guy
seemingly quite weak. But again, that's a direction issue, where they've not said to him, look, you need to really kind of resist Donnie until he manages to get the stake in you. It's the kind of Dahmer-looking dude, Jeffrey Dahmer-looking dude. It's the bartender / server guy, which Jenny. Really? Because it's a really random scene where obviously Jenny and Donnie go in because he takes her on a date effectively, and they order 2 colas or something.
Yeah.
And he brings them their drinks, and then there's 2 random apple turnovers there or something as well, and he says like, I don't have the money for the apple turnovers. He's like, oh, it's okay, they're yesterday's. And then, but like they've ordered drinks, and then again, I think this again it comes down to the script issue. But it's like, oh yeah, they're from yesterday, so that's weird. And then he's like, just so that he exits scene, it's like they needed another line in there. It's like, oh, I'll just go and get you guys some water. Totally forgetting that he's just bought them 2 Cokes as well. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, but
just leave the scene. You don't need to say why you're leaving the scene. You're a waiter, right? You brought the stuff out, you leave.
Yeah, here's some free turnovers on the house.
Yeah.
Exit, yeah. Exactly. But the one that's even worse there is the second time we kind of see him, and that's when all the gangs, a few of the chicks are in there. And this is when everyone's realised that Donnie's kind of gone on a mass murder spree. And you've got, I don't know which one it is. It's not the chick that plays Boots who gets nude for Donnie in one scene. It's the other girl. I can't remember what her name is. But she's only got like one line, and she's saying, "Oh yeah, Donnie's just killed Mrs. Merton."
Oh,
Mrs.
is she the one that comes she's the one that comes running in to the cafe?
Yeah, she's got dark longish hair, and she says, but then it's like the bartender just suddenly just goes, "Here, drink this, and then tell us about it." Like no one knows what's in the drink. It doesn't go, just wait a minute, I'm going to get you a swift drink.
Yeah, here, let me get you some water, which is where this would have worked.
And it's just a random, and I think it's like a random polystyrene cup. He reaches behind the crowd there and just goes, yeah. And I'm like, again, it's probably a script issue, but it's just, yeah, for me, it is harsh on the dude, but I am going with the bartender. Although, again, the bar was high in this respect for bad actors.
Yeah, which is saying much. Yeah, good job if you managed to make the top of this list. Okay, well, we've mentioned the direction quite a few times. So if you directed it or shot it differently, what would you do?
Loads of stuff. Yeah, I mean, for an Andy Milligan film, I mean, there's probably a lot that could be done better. And we'd constantly look at that. I think a good script obviously would help, or a better script. I think the camera work is okay, so I don't think it's too bad how it's shot. Which for an Andy Milligan film, like usually we're seeing all these massive chops and as you mentioned at the beginning, really poor edit that just looks like none of it's meant to fit together. It's like just bang, bang, bang. But in this, it actually, it pans nicely. It follows, it tracks nicely. Again, going on the level of movie. I thought that was okay. So direction-wise, I think actually just pure direction with the actors, like actually giving them more to do, and trying to help them establish the characters a little bit better. Again, the things like, even if the script did say, I'll reach for a cup and give it to the girl, it's a drink. If they had to say just shoot that again, just put it in as a bit of a slightly long, talking maybe 30 seconds longer in the scene, just to go and pour the drink, and him maybe be at the bar, the dude be at the bar, and then they all come in and they're stood at the bar, and then at least you see him giving, getting a shot of whiskey or something, and go, hey, get that down your neck, and then like calm down a bit or something, just the simple things like that. And I think a lot of that, you could probably replicate that throughout, is that if there was a little bit more, I guess it was because they were just shooting on a very small amount of time. I mean, I don't know how long it took for them to shoot it, but it feels like that they tried to shoot the whole thing in one day. And that's how it felt, because it felt rushed as it went through, and therefore the actors just couldn't explore. So I think a bit more time spent on it. I like that it's left open-ended a bit as well, even though that twist is a poor twist. But at least it gives someone a chance maybe to say, oh, you know what, we're gonna make the Weirdo 2 and make it better. Maybe that was Andy Milligan's legacy. He was like, I'll make a poor movie so someone can make a better one. Who knows? How about yourself?
So yeah, so I guess obviously with the way he shoots, I think he just sets the camera up and says do the scene and lets it run way too long. And versus maybe it's he doesn't want to waste film, so he doesn't like redo the scene or move the camera too much around and stuff. So a lot of his scenes are a bit long. They certainly could be cut down and edited differently, as with any Andy Milligan film. And then just he has stuff like there's bits where they're talking, especially with Donnie and Jenny, they're like having a nice conversation, and then they're getting into an argument, and then they're friends again. And it literally just jumps from like nice, friendly, angry, friendly, and there's no transition or justification for the behavior differences. And it's just like, okay, I wrote this, so you need to be mad here, so do that. And yeah, his transitions from one scene to the next, sometimes they go to like, this fade to black, which is a really long black, and you're like, why is this black here so long?
It's like, is it coming back? Is the film actually, is it going to come back on?
Sometimes it's cut, sometimes. And then he has a lot of Dutch angles for no reason. You're supposed to add those to create intensity or to, for something dramatic purposes. But then it's like there's just scenes of Donnie in his little room shot as Dutch angles where nothing's happening. Why are you doing this? So it's like, I just like Dutch angles, so I'm just going to put a lot in.
I don't know whether it was like, it doesn't strike me that Andy Milligan was someone that was trying to be edgy. I think that was just his thing. Yeah,
absolutely.
But yeah, totally agree that it seems like that as a director, he didn't really direct the actors too much, which is fine if you've got really, really good actors and you don't need to tell them what to do because they've got their own ideas. But this cast obviously was, relatively inexperienced, bar maybe a few other B movies that they might have done. I mean, maybe John Rand probably had done a few things before. Naomi Sherwood, I think, possibly had done some stuff. Yeah. All the others, really, Steve Burington, I think Jessica Straus, I think most of those, they were like our leads. They'd not done nothing that anyone would have, well, even this, it's not really anything of note, is it? No. So it's that's where, as part of his job, or even if I take it, he didn't really have a first AD. So even if he had a first AD that was coming in to say, you guys just, let's just kind of slow it down a little bit and try and kind of like develop this, play around with the character a little bit more. And I found that that's what was lacking. As you just said, the actors were just kind of like, yeah, just go with it, and that's it. And Andy's more actually interested. He probably should have been a DOP and then worked on his photography skills, because it seemed like he wanted to be behind the camera more in that respect, rather than actually directing people. So I think that's the crux of the problem in most of his films.
Yeah, exactly. He's trying to be the writer, the director, the DOP, and he's not really any good at any one of them. So what's happening is they all just go to crap. To whereas maybe if he focused on one area a bit better, got better at it, and then had a first AD in there that knew what he was doing or she was doing, that could then direct the actors while he focused on the cinematography, one way or the other. But since he tried to do it all, he didn't really do very well at any of it.
So we're going on from that. We're going to kind of chat a little bit about special effects for a bit, because obviously there are several moments. We've also already discussed a few of them with the burning of Miss Martin's head. Obviously there's what, five main kills, I think. We've got Donnie's mum, the slave guy. Mr. Percival White or something, I don't know, I can't remember what his name was. And then you've got obviously Mrs. Martin, the priest, his wife, and then maybe a sixth kill, so to speak, on the lead bully.
Yeah.
I think it was Nails. I think he was, but his throat gets slit and his hands get chopped off. And then the final, what you could say is a kill, but wasn't really a kill, was obviously when Donnie gets lynched, but we have no idea where his body goes to. So yeah, what do you reckon in terms? Go through a few of those.
Yeah,
Because
so
there's quite a bit of unpacking to do there.
there is. I agree with you. The way some of the mom kill was shot was really nice. The problem, of course, with that, as you mentioned, is the head itself, which clearly is just some dummy head, possibly painted to look like the mom or whatever. And the fact that it comes off so quickly, it's just like stab, head, and you're like, really? So,
but that's some sharp hatchet. You know, these Chinese hatchets can be pretty sharp. You know?
Apparently, she keeps her hatchet sharp. I liked the pitchfork kill. I thought was kind of fun with the slave guy. How that worked. There's the bit where the bully stabbed Donnie, and which is bizarre. So he gets stabbed, and then he just kind of gets up and goes his way, and it's like, are you going to stitch that, or like what happened to the stab here?
Nothing happened after it, because Jenny goes, "Oh, you're hurt. You're still
hurt."
bleeding."
He's like,
or whatever.
Don't worry about it.
That's fine. And this is this whole thing about Donnie. It's like, obviously there's a subplot to Donnie that we never really ever see. Mm-hmm. But I think, is that the idea that Andy thinks that we're gonna go into the deep backstory of Donnie without actually having any visual of that, you know, or any relevance to it? Because there's that, his body disappears at the end. People say that he's not dangerous, but he's strange. But we never really get the established reasons why behind it. Not even a hint to it. But yeah, that was a bad one with the cut.
Yeah, and of course I mentioned the fire already. I think that one was probably the worst. I mean, I get that they're trying to be safe, that they're playing with. They obviously used real fire, whereas now they probably CGI it all. But so they were trying to be safe, but they still could have done that in some way to make it a bit more believable, especially with the face, Miss Martin's face being burnt off.
just purely as I said before, just, you know, get Donnie to turn her to the stove and push her head into it and then bring it back up. Then you could have a cut and then just be like, oh shit, her face is now smoldering, you know. But it's like she's just there having a bit of a tussle, and then she's on the floor, and then it's like suddenly her face is burnt.
Exactly.
And then who else we got in there? So there's what about the Reverend? You mentioned Mrs. Cummins gets killed by the she gets killed by the church stake, doesn't she?
She gets stabbed by the cross.
That's right, yeah.
Which was pretty good as well. So like I do think it's funny because it went back and forth. Some were pretty good and some were terrible. So, you know, but I guess the problem is how much was he spending on it? We know already that Rod Matsui did special effects makeup for this film. So how much was Rod given to actually do the makeup in regards to
I seem to remember him saying something like that it was very much out of the box. So it's like you just turn up on the day with your kit and it's like what you've got in your kit, and he's like, okay, do you work your magic, so to speak. So I imagine there probably wasn't much prep that went in there. It's just a matter of, you've got the job, do your best kind of thing. And I think the best ones that worked were the more simple cut, like you say, the stake, the pitchfork. You know, there were more direct kind of hits. Even the cut from the stab, you know, looked good. All those things looked good. But when it ramped up a little bit, and maybe Andy had asked for something a bit more, you know, gruesome and gory, it was like, well, come on, you know, I've got, let's say, $1,000 to spend, and you want hands being chopped off, heads being chopped off. They're the two main ones that I think that come, and then they ended up being very poor, which obviously isn't any reference to Rod Matsui's skills. It's just the fact that it was so low budget, and then the expectation, I assume, from Milligan was that he wanted, you know, absolute, you know, practical magic he wanted from Rod to kind of like, you know, bring us something that just wasn't going to be there.
Yeah. So instead of maybe doing the hands chopped off, leave that scene out, take that money and use it on the head being chopped off scenes to make the head look a bit believable, or use that kind of thing. So, or who knows how much time they had to create these effects. Like you said, maybe they just showed up on the day and was like, okay, here's a head, chop it off. And it's like, we need a little more time to make this look believable, you know?
I mean, or even like film it differently so that the hands are getting chopped off. And then instead of having the hands flying off kind of scene, because you just see these two fake puppet hands fly away. Just have it like where the dude's lay on the floor with his throat slit, and just see, you know, almost like, you know, just see some like cauterized arm ends or something.
Yeah.
And you can just use a dummy there and just do it, you know, do it face down or what, you know, like from the neck below, just film it so it's a dummy. I can't imagine that would have cost
Couldn't have been too much
any more to do that. That'd have been less. Yeah.
So I guess to finish that train of discussion, so under makeup department you had Rod, who we've mentioned, and then Andy Milligan was also was under the makeup department. So it seems like Rod focused a lot on the prosthetics and Andy focused on the makeup, which I guess explains a lot of what Rob must have had to deal with on that shoot.
I think so. I think that was. So next one. So moving on from that.
So character,
if there was any character that you wanted to be in the Weirdo, who would it be and why?
That's such a hard one to say because they're all just terrible in different ways. You know, do you want to be one that dies? Maybe you do actually, because you're in this film, right?
You're like, I'm out of there,
I think I'm gonna go with Reverend Cummings, played by John Rand. Okay. So I think I feel like I should die as a character. And I just think it would be fun to play a creepy priest. You know, he's so stereotypical, which isn't surprising at all with Andy Milligan's writing, to be like, well, of course the priest is going to be a pedo.
Of course
that kind of stuff. And I just think it would be, as an actor, I think it would be fun to play that part of just a creepy priest and then get killed.
Is there anyone else that you'd consider being as well?
Or maybe one of the bullies, just for the fun of just being a bully meathead terrible actor. I don't know, it's so hard. They're so bad. I don't know.
I totally agree with you though. It was a real
so hard to say.
My answer initially was none of them. Like,
that's basically mine.
I wouldn't want to be in that movie. But if we take it as just, if someone said, oh, here's the story, and we knew nothing about, you know, the director or whatever, and it was just like, oh, here's this. Who do you want to be? I think Reverend Cummings would be interesting to play, just because again, it's always good to play the bad guy. I think a lot of people like to kind of switch that from their normal to, you know, developing on someone that's, you know, he's not really a bad guy. He's just a creepy dude, and he's got an estranged wife who also kind of just seems to toe the line with whatever weirdos like. Oh yeah, I know that he spends his time up in the church feeling girls up whilst I'm doing the chores, you know. And she's like, she's cool with it because it's like, no, Donnie's a bad guy. But my one I'd actually like to play, even though it is technically a female character, and it's actually Donnie's ma, who obviously has sent him away to, you know, Miss Martins, who we discover is actually Donnie's auntie, not actually his real carer. I just think that with that character, I think it's just because I like how the scene's lit, and it does look nice in there. Like it's gritty. It looks like a typical kind of like 70s, 80s, late 70s, early 80s lodge. I know that movie was filmed in 89, but we can assume, you know, in terms of datings, that it could be set in the early 80s, for example. So I just like that. I like how that was dressed and everything. So and she's in there. She's just this kind of like, all she's interested in is making a bit of money, and is quite happy to flog her son to get, I don't know what it was, $1,500. So I know
Yeah.
in the 80s, what would $1,500 be worth now today?
Yeah.
About say 30 grand or something.
Something, you know, it's a
Roughly.
decent chunk of change,
Yeah.
especially for somebody with not much money.
For a son.
Yeah. Sell your child into slavery.
Flog your son out to Mr. Percival White and get yourself, you know, fresh $1,500. I mean, what's the problem? I just think it would have been nice to explore that character a bit more, because I don't think we saw enough of her. We just see that Donnie goes to see her. Obviously, he doesn't like his mum because she's disowned him. He goes there, you know, obviously she cuts the cake, you know, chops the cake up. That's the first kind of action we see of her. And then she's just like, you know, she's a bitch, basically. She's talking to him like trash. And then she's suddenly like, oh, yeah, how do you fancy going away and living somewhere else? And obviously Donnie's totally against it because he's met Jenny at that point, and he's realizing that there's a bigger world out there than just Miss Martin's shed, as it were, and the whole kind of being kept under lock and key for most of his life. So yeah, I'd like to explore Donnie's more. If there was one character in there that I'd like to look at, it would be that, because I think that there would be more to see from her. Yeah, I think so. So kind of last one before we go on to the full like rating is our cinematography and overall shot choices, because go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely mentioned that a bit in the directing aspect because our director was our cinematographer. But
did you have no other? Was there no other camera operator on there?
There's
because it felt
not according to IMDb. I mean, I guess I could
like
it
felt like it was better. You know, not all of it obviously, but I felt like some of the establishing shots and like some of the tracking shots and things like that, I felt like it was better. Like you compare that with Monstrosity, which wasn't much before it.
Yeah.
That was awful.
Yeah.
But this, it seemed to flow. Yeah. Sorry.
It could have. So there is an assistant camera listed here as Charles Beasley, and there might be, and Charles did not work on, I don't think, it doesn't look like Charles worked on Monstrosity, so maybe that helped a little bit.
That makes sense. Yeah,
that could be. And then there also still might be people that are listed in the credits in the film that are not updated to IMDb as well.
Sure. Yeah.
But I mentioned the unnecessary Dutch angles. You're supposed to use them for effect to create, heightened drama in the scene, not just because they look cool. But compared to Monstrosity, I think Andy did pick up his cinematography game a little bit. Some of the shots seem to be a bit nicer overall.
There's an improvement for sure.
Certainly.
From, if we're talking about the bar of a previous movie from a director, there's an improvement. Yeah, the cinematography does improve, and as I mentioned in the, I think it's one of the few ones where it just looks, the look and feel, it's one of the most believable scenes. Take out the really poor head that's in there, but his mum's house, outside exterior, it's lit really poorly. It's like, because it's like they didn't do it all in a day. Obviously this was towards the end of the day, so they seem to be using a lot of natural light, so it didn't seem like there's any reflectors used or bounce boards or anything like that. It's just like, okay, we've not got the money for a lighting rig or whatever to kind of pop outside, but actually the lighting interior of that cabin or lodge was quite nice, because it looked like it was not going to be a very nice place to spend your time, and that Donnie wouldn't want to be there. And she was just effectively, in some ways, there's like a mirror in there of Donnie and his mum, because she's effectively a loner, but she's kind of chosen to do that. Whereas obviously Donnie's like being made a loner and put in his own room, you know what I mean? So it's like a lot of the movie, all the characters, if you look at them, are all kind of lone subjects, because obviously even Miss Martins is kind of a lone. She's got a friend's daughter or whatever who comes to stay, which again is a random. It's like they just we've got to give this part to
Somebody.
her. Yeah, and it's like it was totally irrelevant, other than to establish that Donnie had never seen a girl, naked or semi-naked before. It was just like, oh, but that scene went on for ages. He was just like at the doorway. But yeah, I liked it was an improvement on its previous. I think that's all I can really say.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Well,
yeah.
it's let's wrap it up then. Final thoughts and rating.
Rating. I'm trying to think what I go. The thing is, if I end up giving this a lower rating than Monstrosity, it's gonna look bad. But now I think about it, I think I was probably too generous with Monstrosity. I think this is a sweet story. I think that's there's a basis there for a really, really sweet story between obviously the two leads, obviously Jenny and Donnie, as we already said. Like that's nice. They're ostracized from society, so two people come together randomly. So the story's nice. Makeup's poor, in terms of just how it links in. It could have been shot differently, and it would have been cheaper. Various random angles, certain casts that aren't necessary in there that or that they're useless really. Like the bullies weren't; they were poor. The bartender, again, you've got these random kind of like cameo parts, like say the daughter of what's her name, or the friend's daughter of Miss Martin's.
Miss Martin's the niece or something like that. I think she is.
I don't know if it's a niece or if it's a friend's
she is, yeah.
niece, something. But it's like it's a random character in there. She is not needed. The bartender isn't really needed. These are just scenes. It's like it's padded out to try and add a bit more depth to the story, and then they're just really not needed. I probably, because the story's sweet, and I think Jenny does such a good job of carrying like the two of them. I think, or Jessica Straus carries those two quite well. I'm probably going to give it I'm going to give it a 6 actually, and that seems really generous.
Not bad, yeah.
But I think it's because my Monstrosity, I'll have to look back, but I think my Monstrosity one, I think I gave that like a 4.5, and it's better than Monstrosity.
Yeah, so I'm going to go. This is better than Monstrosity. That's easy. So he did improve as a filmmaker in the 2 years between those films. And yeah, you're right. Jessica does a good job, and it is a sweet story. It's a terrible script because who knows how much of it was even written. So yeah, how do you rate it? And I think
it's very tough.
the thing is, I'm trying to put it in the scope of an Andy Milligan film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of this cheesy old B films of what it is. And I think you can appreciate it a bit for what it is. But at some point, Milligan needs to learn how to make a film. And by this point in his career, he had made quite a few. And his progression as a filmmaker was very, very slow.
Yeah, there's not much of an upward curve going on there, is there?
No.
And again, and like you said earlier, it'd be great to actually speak to him today, because whether that was then an intentional thing to try and make, the most rushed, unplanned movie possible, just by getting a scratch crew and going, right, there we go, let's go with it.
Yeah. So I guess with that, I'm going to go a little bit lower than you, and I'm going to go a 5 out of 10 instead.
Okay, yeah. I feel like I'm being way too generous.
You are being quite generous, but
did I say a 6?
You said a 6, so that's your rating. You have to stick with it.
I might smidge it down to a 5.5. If I went 4.5 with, I feel like I should have maybe gone 3.5 with Monstrosity.
Well, you tend to generally be a bit more critical on these ratings than I am, so it's unusual. I'm going with a lower rating than you.
No, and it's fair. It's right down the middle, but it's fair enough. on the
Yeah.
concept of it being, you know, judging it on an Andy Milligan film against other Andy Milligan films rather than any other horrors or cult horrors. So would we say then, before we kind of shoot off, would we say that this is a cult classic in some
I
way?
wouldn't say this in some way. I guess you could consider it a cult classic by the criteria that cult classics are rated. I would drop classic and maybe just say this particular film, along with Andy Milligan fans, he has a cult fan group.
Yeah.
And this falls perfectly within the films that Andy Milligan fans.
If you're a fan of those, how kind. Like, if you're a fan of these movies, then you'll love it.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yes.
So it's possibly like more like a B, almost a C movie classic rather than a cult classic.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even then, that's probably a bit of a stretch. Yeah, I think we're about there. To be honest, I think that's probably enough of the Weirdo covered.
Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon.
Wrap it up. So with that, what's coming up next, Kev?
Yeah, next on Rip It Up, on our main show, Rip It Up Again, we've got actually, I think, Emily Brighty, who's a comedian. She's going to be joining us for some fun and games, as the usual kind of messing around on Rip It Up. I think, so who are we going to choose next time for our review as well? I think it's your turn, is it? Because did I choose the Weirdo? Yeah.
I think you did. So I'm going to go with kind of a famous film, but I think it'll be an interesting discussion considering current culture. And I'm going to go Blazing Saddles.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Nice. Yeah.
A film that I don't think could be made nowadays. Yeah. So I think
I don't think it could, but yeah, plenty of beans in that one.
Yeah, lots of beans. So I'm going to go Blazing Saddles.
Interesting. Nice. Okay, cool. That's it.
All right.
Join us again next time then. Cheers.
See you next time.
Bye.